Today, we're opening a case file that, if handed to a television screenwriter, would almost certainly be sent back with a note saying, "This is too far-fetched." No audience would ever believe it. At 15, she lied to her parents and secretly slipped away to act in a movie. 10 years later, she became the beauty icon of a classic martial arts drama, hailed by an entire generation as the most beautiful Guo Fu ever seen on screen. Just as her career seemed to be opening into a limitless future, that door suddenly slammed shut, and she walked through the gates of a wealthy and powerful family. Then that family collapsed. Her husband ended up in prison on fraud charges, while the media immediately branded her with two labels that sounded glamorous and cruel at the same time: a spoiled socialite who squandered money, and a spendthrift tycoon's wife. Yet even before the divorce was finalized, she was already by the side of an heir to a fortune worth 8 billion Hong Kong dollars. 9 years passed, and she still walked away empty-handed, all because of one obstacle. Some said she burned through money. Others called her a gold digger. But the strangest part of the story lies in its ending. When all the men had left the stage one after another, the person who remained, and eventually stepped onto a podium to receive a prestigious medal, was her. So who is she really? The subject of today's case file is Gigi Fu Ming-hin, born on October 13th, 1970, in Hong Kong, with ancestral roots in Ningbo, Zhejiang. To understand her, we have to go back to her parents' generation, because these were certainly not the kind of ordinary parents who usually appear in stories about the entertainment industry. Her father was Fu Kwok Leung, better known by his stage name, Fu Chi. He was a trained engineer who graduated from the Department of Civil Engineering at St. John's University in Shanghai. But while he studied roads and bridges, his heart belonged entirely to literature and film. A single visit to the studios of Great Wall Movie Enterprises changed the course of his entire life. In 1952, Fu Kwok Leung abandoned engineering and joined Great Wall full-time. Her mother was Suen Wai Lai, known professionally as Shek Wai, who joined Great Wall in 1951. Alongside Sia Moon and Chan Sio-si, she formed the trio that all of Hong Kong knew at the time as the Three Princesses of Great Wall. The husband and wife appeared together in countless films, becoming an on-screen couple whose faces audiences could recognize with their eyes closed. But being artists was only half of their story. During the 1967 riots, the couple openly aligned themselves with the political left. They moved from one protest to another, from one gathering to the next, holding copies of quotations from Chairman Mao high above their heads and standing firmly in the front row. And because of that, the consequences came quickly. Both were handcuffed by the British authorities and taken to the detention center on Victoria Road, a place nicknamed the White House, where they remained for about 8 months. The case became so serious that it triggered a series of diplomatic negotiations between China and Britain. After his release, Fu Kwok Leung moved completely into the business world. Shek Wai, meanwhile, turned toward public service and later became a deputy to the National People's Congress and a member of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. So the youngest daughter born into that household didn't have to make any effort to earn the status of a true young lady from a distinguished family. And with the additional privilege of being the youngest child, it was only natural that she was indulged by her parents throughout her upbringing. In the language of martial arts fiction, she truly was a real-life Guo Fu, and this detail would later return as one of fate's most ironic jokes. But we'll come to that in time. Then came the summer of 1985. Raymond Wong Pak Ming's film company, Cinema City, announced an open casting call for the movie Happy Ghost 2. The 15-year-old girl heard the news, and the desire to become a star that had long been smoldering inside her suddenly burst into flames, impossible to extinguish. The problem was that, although she'd been born into an artistic family, she was still a student, and if she asked for permission, the answer would almost certainly be no. Her solution was remarkably simple. Then she wouldn't ask. She'd just go. She took the risk of hiding the audition from her parents, and against all expectations, she was actually selected. She was cast alongside Fenny Yuen Kit Ying, Sarah Lo Mei Mei, and Shireen Chan Ka Ling. Afraid that the truth might come out, she even invented a false stage name, Suen Wai, to conceal her identity more thoroughly. The secret lasted until the movie was released in theaters. Only then did the truth finally emerge, leaving the two veteran performers stunned to discover that their daughter had secretly spent the entire summer working as an actress, and apparently she wasn't bad at it at all. That summer left her with a dream that was specific and real, no longer a vague fantasy, but education still came first. So in 1989, after leaving Diocesan Girls' School, she packed her bags and traveled to Britain to study at the University of York. In 1994, she returned to Hong Kong with her degree in hand and found herself facing the classic question that everyone at that age eventually has to answer. What do you plan to do next? She answered without a second of hesitation. Act. When her daughter revealed what she wanted to do, her father picked up the phone and called Run Run Shaw, the head of TVB, directly. One phone call. Then, under Shaw's personal arrangement, Gigi Fu entered TVB immediately. There was no audition, no time spent playing background roles like most of her peers had to endure. The moment she arrived, she made her debut in a named supporting role. In her first television drama, she was cast opposite Hakan Lee Hak Khan in Weapons of Power, playing Yip Po Yi, and audiences began to recognize her face. That same year, she moved straight into a leading role alongside Ho Bo Sung in A Change of Fate. It was a significant milestone in the early stage of her career, and one that many people in the industry spend a decade trying to reach. But her true breakthrough wouldn't come until 1995, when acclaimed producer Lee Tim Shing handed her the defining role of her career, Guo Fu in The Condor Heroes 95. And here, I need to make clear just how important this series was. It didn't merely dominate the ratings in Hong Kong. When it was later broadcast in mainland China, it reached audiences across the entire country, became permanently etched into the memories of tens of millions of people, and went on to become an enduring classic. Her portrayal of Guo Fu, both in appearance and temperament, seemed almost to have stepped directly out of the original novel. After that role, her name exploded everywhere, accompanied by the title, The Most Beautiful Guo Fu. Some viewers even boldly declared that she wasn't inferior to Carman Lee Yuktung in any way. Riding that wave of success, she went on to appear in The Romantic Swordsman, A Tough Side of a Lady, and Taming of the Princess. It was true that she was rarely given the main female role, but to be completely honest, what counted as a disadvantage for her was still a distant luxury for most people in the industry. The opportunities available to her were far better than average. If she'd continued on that path, becoming one of TVB's leading actresses would only have been a matter of time. The problem was that she never seemed to truly crave that position. Her professional ambition always appeared weaker than what one might expect from a rising star. And instead of throwing herself into her career, she threw herself into romance. The first man was Lung Wing Chung, whom she met on the set of Weapons of Power. They saw each other every day, played through one romantic scene after another, and eventually reached the point where neither of them could tell where the script ended and real life began. The spark caught before either of them even noticed. She was still new to the industry then, young and fresh-faced. He was one of TVB's rising male leads, charming, quick-witted, and naturally funny. Anyone looking at them would have had to admit they seemed perfectly matched. For 4 years, they were practically welded together, showing up at events with their fingers tightly interlocked. The press crowned them the entertainment industry's golden couple, and practically everyone in show business was already waiting for the wedding invitations. Then, 1997 arrived, and everything fell apart. While filming Detective Investigation Files 3, the young actor developed feelings for a new actress in the cast named Yo-Yo Chung Lai-Kei. But the detail that turned the scandal into legend was the rumor that this woman had once been one of Gigi Fu's closest friends. Put that into a television drama, and audiences would have torn it apart for being too unbelievable. But it was real. The outcome was easy to predict. She couldn't swallow what had happened, so she buried the pain and ended the relationship. Their 4-year romance closed with a cold final period. But don't rush to feel sorry for her. She didn't sit around crying long enough for anyone to work up much sympathy. Instead, she walked straight into the first marriage of her life. In 1998, at a banquet hosted by Raymond Wong, she met Michael Yip Kim Po, a wealthy businessman 11 years older than her who'd already been married once. The story of how he made his fortune was so extraordinary that he'd earned a nickname of his own, the tycoon who rose from the ranks of manual laborers. Born in 1959 in Dongguan, he traveled alone to Hong Kong in the 1980s and found work as a fur processing laborer on Shanghai Street. After growing tired of being a worker, he took over the purchasing side of the business as well. He personally traveled north to Hebei and Shandong, moving from village to collect mink pelts, then carrying them back to Hong Kong for processing and resale. In 1991, he founded Ocean Grand Holdings, expanding into everything from finance and energy to real estate. The company went public in 1997 and, at its peak, reached a market value of 28 billion Hong Kong dollars. The only problem was that by the time he met Gigi Fu, the damage left behind by the 1997 Asian financial crisis was still all around him. Debt had piled up, and his business career was in free fall. But he clawed his way back. In 2000, catching the technology stock boom at exactly the right moment, he acquired a technology company in Beijing. Its stock price surged 7-fold, and the company's value returned to its previous peak, 28 billion Hong Kong dollars. Now let's return to that banquet. He took one look at her and instantly fell for her, then launched an open campaign to win her over without even trying to hide it. But Gigi Fu had grown up surrounded by wealth, and she was not easily impressed. So he turned to the weapon he understood best: money. Gifts and diamond rings were only the opening move. On her birthday, he booked the entire Peninsula Hotel, invited a whole room full of politicians, business people, and celebrities, and staged an extravagantly lavish celebration. It was said that tens of millions were spent on that single evening, and by the next morning, the party had landed on the front pages of the major newspapers. That sugar-coated offensive worked with frightening efficiency. From the day they met to the moment they began discussing marriage, only 1 year had passed. And here, a rumor emerged that instantly changed the flavor of the love story. People claimed that the entire courtship had been part of a wife-hunting plan he'd prepared in advance, complete with criteria as clear as a scorecard. She had to be a celebrity, she had to be famous, and her personal background had to be spotless. In fact, quite a few actresses had reportedly attended his dinner gatherings. But the woman who ultimately caught his eye was Gigi Fu. The reason was easy to understand. She'd maintained a pure, untarnished image since entering the industry, and her parents had already immigrated to Canada. In 1999, the two married in Hong Kong. The wedding was so lavish that it became a story across the news. But the public insisted that this was no love story. It was said that when they married, the two sides signed an agreement that included an enormous living allowance, along with several clauses whose contents were never made public. Some commentators put it bluntly. What he was paying for wasn't merely the status of being married to a celebrity, but also the political pedigree behind her. Put simply, the marriage was a transaction, and both sides knew exactly what they were giving and what they expected in return. After the wedding, she withdrew from the screen entirely at her husband's request. All the energy of a rising actress was redirected into exactly two things: spending money and raising dogs. So just how extravagant was her lifestyle? Her clothing budget alone reportedly reached 300,000 Hong Kong dollars a month. A custom-made Dior gown for a single event could cost several $100,000. Her dressing room was piled with designer handbags like a warehouse. Her collection of Hello Kitty merchandise alone was rumored to consume nearly $3 million a year. At the time, the media even calculated the cost of her 7 years as the wife of a wealthy tycoon and arrived at these figures, approximately $25 million spent on clothing, around $21 million on antiques, while every outfit she wore to a banquet started at no less than $1 million. As for the dogs, it must be said honestly, they lived better than most people. When she moved into her husband's home, she brought 6 beloved dogs with her. Far from complaining, her husband hired a dedicated nanny to care for them. Every day, the dogs were fed powdered lingzi mushrooms. They received regular health examinations and acupuncture treatments, all of which added up to several million over the years. When one of the dogs became seriously ill, it would be flown to the United States or Canada to seek treatment from renowned specialists. When a dog died, there would be an elaborate memorial ceremony, and its owner would follow a vegetarian diet for 49 days to pray for its soul. By that point, the media didn't need much time to come up with a label. They immediately branded her a wasteful tycoon's wife, and even ranked her among the successors to Hong Kong's most notorious money-burning socialites of that era. Then the dream collapsed. Right on schedule, the way dreams like this so often do. In July 2006, Michael Yip became involved in a case that shocked the entire city. Ocean Grand Holdings was found to have 840 million yuan missing from its accounts, money that had seemingly vanished without a trace. Before the smoke from the explosion had even cleared, the chairman disappeared into mainland China and remained out of sight for more than a year. Her husband fled while she stayed behind, and the media immediately gave her a new title, a fallen socialite from a prominent family. But she made no attempt to play the suffering wife. She appeared indifferent to what became of her husband, continuing to dine, dress, and appear before the cameras with the same air of elegance, as though nothing had happened. And during the time her husband was absent from Hong Kong, the list of romantic rumors surrounding her grew longer by the month, from Chow Lap King to Ting Tsko, and even Leung Ting Yu, vice chairman of the Tung Hua Group of Hospitals. The greatest commotion came in September 2006, when she flew to Japan to attend a Madonna concert, only to be caught on camera holding hands with Ting Tsko and dancing pressed closely against him at a club, not to mention passionately kissing Chow Lap King in the middle of a Tokyo street. As for her husband, the final bill still had to be paid. No one can remain on the run forever. Late on the night of September 17, 2007, believing the storm had passed, he slipped back into Hong Kong through the Lok Ma Chau border crossing. He made it only a few steps beyond immigration before being handcuffed on the spot. The following day, he, his younger sister Christy Yip Wan Fung, and 3 other senior company executives were charged with a total of 23 offenses, including conspiracy to defraud, conspiracy to steal, and money laundering. In October 2010, the sentences came down. He received 7 years in prison, while his sister received 6. She, meanwhile, didn't stay entangled for even one more day. In 2008, their divorce was officially announced. In a magazine interview at the time, she stated bluntly that their marriage had already broken down 2 years earlier. They'd agreed to go their separate ways, but because he was caught up in legal proceedings, she didn't want to put additional pressure on him and temporarily postponed the matter. It was only after he was in prison and hired a lawyer to handle the paperwork that the divorce was finally completed. But the financial account between them still wasn't settled. Sometime between 2003 and 2004, Michael Yip purchased a villa with 2 parking spaces in Stanley under the company's name. When Ocean Grand collapsed, he turned to her and told her that, as another shareholder, she had to cover part of the mortgage payments. She paid 140,000 Hong Kong dollars every month for 30 consecutive months, totaling 4.2 million, and then paid another 2 million to settle the remaining mortgage. And how did it end? The property was sold for 63 million Hong Kong dollars. Yet her name appeared nowhere in the distribution of the profits. Furious, she filed a claim with the High Court in 2020, seeking to recover a total of 6.2 million Hong Kong dollars. And the story still wasn't over. In 2014, long after the divorce had been finalized, he tracked down her father at his home. By then, the elderly man was nearly 90 years old. Michael Yip asked him for a loan, offering a grand-sounding explanation. He wanted to raise capital for a public listing and prepared to rebuild his business empire. In the end, the old man lent him $5 million in support. The loan agreement was perfectly clear. After 18 months, $10 million had to be repaid. But a year and a half passed, and the proposed listing hadn't moved forward by even a single step. Every time he was asked about it, he delayed the matter with the same 2 words: in progress. Yet that money was the retirement fund of an elderly man nearing the end of his life. Finally, left with no other choice, he hired a lawyer and took his former son-in-law to court. With her husband in prison, the outside world was already preparing to write the final chapter in the downfall of a former star. But before anyone could finish writing that ending, she'd already appeared beside another heir from a wealthy family, Albert Chuang Kapun. And it was the timeline that truly raised eyebrows, because the relationship had begun even before her divorce was officially finalized. According to media reports, as early as 2006, precisely when her husband was being accused of fraud and had vanished from public view, she'd already entered the life of the third-generation heir to Chuang's consortium. He was only 25 at the time, while she was 36, exactly 11 years older. It was a textbook older woman, younger man romance. The name Albert Chuang may be unfamiliar to many people, but his background is anything but ordinary. He's now a member of the Legislative Council and the third-generation heir to Chuang's consortium, with a family fortune worth 8 billion Hong Kong dollars. A true third-generation heir. Their relationship was officially exposed in June 2012, when the two flew together to Okinawa, Japan, to attend the wedding of Taiwanese actress Annie Wu Chen-chun. After spending 5 days and 4 nights together, they were caught by the tabloids. But the romance had been destined for a difficult road from the very beginning, because the obstacle was not either of the two people involved. It was the man who held power within the Chuang family, Albert's father, Alan Chuang Sha-sui. He reportedly opposed the relationship from the start for 3 reasons. First, she was 11 years older than his son, a gap he considered far too wide. Second, she'd already been married once, and her former husband was serving time in prison for fraud. Third, in the eyes of an older generation, her public image was hardly ideal. She liked going to bars and staying out late, spent money freely, and from his perspective would almost certainly drag his son down with her. So how did the elder Chuang intervene? He used the oldest and most effective tactic of all. He turned off the tap. According to an unverified account from someone close to the matter, although Albert Chuang held the title of executive director at Chuang's consortium, his monthly salary at the time was only around 60,000 Hong Kong dollars. For a position like that, the figure was absurdly low. The purpose was obvious: to make sure his son had no spare money that could find its way to Gigi Fu. When turning off the tap still didn't work, he escalated. He placed a pre-written resignation letter in front of his son and forced him to choose. On one side stood the woman. On the other stood the entire family empire. If he wanted to keep her, he'd have to sign the paper and give up his place as an heir to the Chuang family business empire. It would have been a difficult choice for anyone. So what did he choose? He chose to prove through his actions that his feelings were no game. No matter how tightly his father restricted him, he continued taking her abroad to go scuba diving and skiing. Even when he traveled to mainland China for business meetings, he brought his girlfriend with him. 9 years, from 2006 to 2015. During that time, wedding rumors surfaced again and again and again, only to fade away each time. And the reason always came back to the same person. But romance doesn't pay the bills. And reality is very patient. When neither pressure nor persuasion worked, the father delivered one final blow. He not only reduced his son's authority within the company, but also required him to return home every evening and report in. That kind of daily pressure left Albert Chuang trapped between two sides. And Gigi Fu, realizing that she was being pushed closer and closer to the wall, began alternately coaxing and pressuring him to marry her. The man caught in the middle had nowhere left to retreat, and in the end, he chose the option that cost the least financially but the most emotionally. He ended the relationship. In 2015, the once sensational romance between the socialite and the younger heir officially came to an end. And this is where the story took a sharp turn. After that breakup, She seemed to awaken from a dream of wealth and privilege that had lasted more than a decade, and she stepped into an entirely new role, animal advocate. In truth, the seed had already been planted in 2004 when she became chairwoman of the Hong Kong SPCA. She'd remain in that position for more than 20 consecutive years, spending all that time traveling from place to place on behalf of homeless animals. To find adoptive families for stray dogs, she personally designed promotional posters, posed affectionately with the animals, and posted the photographs on social media. On one occasion, she brought 30 dogs with her to a charity event. When a reporter asked whether she felt lonely after being single for so long, she laughed and replied that she had 30 dogs, and they were more dependable than many people. To be fair, her career in animal protection became even more distinguished than her years as the wife of a wealthy tycoon. In addition to serving for many years as chairwoman and trustee, she established the Fu Ming-hin Animal Welfare Center and a memorial fund named after one of her former dogs. Through those efforts, she drew public attention to the treatment and sterilization of stray animals. She also actively campaigned for Hong Kong to introduce legislation banning animal cruelty. In recognition of all those efforts, Gigi Fu received the Outstanding Chinese Leader Award on November 20th, 2024. Today, at 55, she remains single. But her life is far more active than that of most women of her generation. She travels, goes scuba diving, takes photographs, and journeys around the world. Open her social media page, and all you'll see is dogs, and more dogs. She once stated her philosophy of life without hesitation: "Who says a woman has to get married? I have money, dogs, and freedom, and that's the ultimate life setup." Looking back over the entire journey, she went from being remembered as the most beautiful Guo Fu to becoming a wealthy wife cast aside by an elite family, and finally to leading an animal protection movement. This controversial actress was born at the top, entered the world of the wealthy twice, and twice was thrown back to the bottom. She handed someone else the pen to write her life only once, and it took her 16 years to take it back. But when it came to the dogs, she never wavered. Not once in 20 years. What do you think about today's case file? If there's anything you'd like to say or discuss, leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story worth watching, please give it a like and remember to subscribe to the channel. Goodbye.